Cassidy here, and welcome to Sprouting Artistry, a place where we explore what it means to create sustainably. For my first official episode, I have a conversation with my friend Luke Thompson. I have known Luke for quite a while now through Estuary and Paul Vanderklay's little world of randos, and I asked him to come and talk with me today about what it means to create and what some like to call this little corner. I thought it was a perfect place to start because I feel like I create somewhere in the space of this little corner. And I think a lot of this series is really aimed at trying to help orient myself as I create and maybe help others too who are in this space to figure out what does it mean to create well and sort of tend this garden that we have discovered for ourselves in the space of YouTube. So I thought it was a really, really beautiful conversation, one of my favorites, and I hope you enjoy it too. Luke, welcome back to the channel.
Thank you.
My favorite regular.
Oh, that's sweet. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, well, you are the first official conversation for this new project that I'm doing that I'm calling Sprouting Artistries. And basically, it's kind of opening the door to have more conversations about art and creativity and how we do those things sustainably and well, moving towards like the good, beautiful, and true. And I thought the only appropriate place to start with that is by talking about this little corner, Estuary, these sort of channels that have come out of, I guess in a broader sense, the Jordan Peterson movement, but I think in a smaller sense, really Paul Vanderklay and what he's done on the internet. And I thought you were the perfect person to start this conversation because out of anybody creating, it feels like you really create purely because you want to create and you think it's like it's moving towards the good, beautiful, and true. You don't have this kind of conscience of like, I should be creating in this way because that's how YouTube does it. You kind of let it all kind of emerge and create as you feel. And there's something very interesting about that and something very, I think, core to what's coming out of this little corner. So I don't know. I'll leave it there, but I'll throw it over to you and sort of ask you what you think about all of that.
Yeah. So, thank you for having me. It's always nice to talk to you. It's nice to just do this with you because I don't get to hang out with you as much as we
No.
used to virtually.
Yeah.
And it's funny that you thought of me and you even said that. I have never really thought of myself as that creative. And I mean, it's changed and it's evolved over time, I suppose. But you know, we've talked about Enneagram stuff, and I'm an Enneagram 4, and we've talked about how I grew up, and I would not say that I grew up in a place that uh, cared about or fostered artistic expression
Uh-huh.
at all. And and I think I've never, even though I've always liked music and film and I'm pretty aesthetically wired. Like if you look at Big Five stuff, I'm like I think now they relabeled one of those dimensions of the breakdown of openness to just aesthetics, I think. And I think I'm like 98th percentile on that. And so and I've always wanted to be like I've always loved music. I tried taking guitar lessons for a while, but I don't. Yeah, I don't know. I suppose whatever I do in this little corner and live streaming is creative in a way. And we talk about that in terms of like creating space and hospitality. Um, so it's interesting that you thought of me and you think of me that way. And I suppose that it is the more that I evolve in my understanding of it. But so two other aspects of what you said is I played a clip from Rogan on the beginning of a live stream, I think recently. It was this conversation with his recent one with Bridget Fetisi. And they were talking about his comedy club and his larger projects. And he said, and all the stuff that he does. And he was saying the thing that he's been most successful at he had no vision for, no like pre-formulated understanding or vision for. He just, which is his podcast, which is,
Yeah.
said he was just hanging out with friends and just doing it because he wanted to and talking to people he wanted to talk to. He had
Mm-hmm.
no formula for it. And even to this day, I think he's resisted and continued in that same, he's been he talks about following the muse a lot, and he talks about how the muse is real. And in another conversation they had, he was speaking to the leader, the main singer of the Black Crows, who I wasn't that familiar with, and he's the Black Crow singer said he thinks the muse is feminine, is like, and that she's jealous. And so he said he's been so cautious not to, he's always following her and pursuing her and following his creative stuff because he's afraid if he doesn't, she'll leave him. And
Hmm.
Rogan like was relating to that, I think, in just his podcasting. But it's just interesting because whatever we're doing here, I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if it's we're creating something that is akin to what podcasting was 10, 15 years ago, where people just had no idea of its value and everybody was just like, what are you doing? You're wasting your time. And now it's such a huge thing that people are trying to pursue it now in what I would call a mammonistic way or a formulaic way where they're trying to game it and
Uh-huh.
get a successful podcast. But if you listen to what Rogan said and you try to follow his formula, which is the not formula,
Mm-hmm.
it's just doing what you love and it's talking to people you want to talk to. And that's kind of my vision of the TLC versus what I call Christian YouTube and why I'm somewhat disinclined to, like, I've never, and Paul does this too, PBK, like pursuing big guests, or like I've said, I'm gonna go to this Northwestuary conference, and like all the big name people that are gonna be there, like whether it's who's the storyteller, poet, Irish guy, what's his name?
Ian McGilchrist?
No, the one who recently, I think he's
Or Martin Shaw, Martin Shaw.
Martin Shaw. Yes,
That's what
Martin
I
Shaw.
meant. I'm sorry. I said
Okay,
the wrong name, but
yeah,
Martin Shaw is who I was thinking
not
of.
Scottish, Irish. Yeah,
Yeah.
and or like usually I'm better in the mornings. What's my brain? Or who's the curly haired move your body guy?
Rafe Kelly.
There we go. I'll just describe people and you tell me their names.
Yeah, I know the
Um,
names because I have to know the names.
yeah. So like there are these guys and I have nothing wrong with meeting them, but or I don't, it's not like I wouldn't want to meet them and talk to them. But like I want to talk to my friends. I I want to talk to the randos. I
Yeah.
want to talk to people who have no where I can leverage nothing. Or if I spoke to those people, I'd want it to be private. Like I want to do the opposite of Christian YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't, and I don't know, maybe that's a wrong impulse in me. So that I suppose that is my creative impulse in this space and why I like live streaming is because part of it is just it feels cathartic to me. Because this is what I've always done, whether it's on Vox or Signal or any like this is what I used to do in the early days. I would just send people like a 10-minute message of my thoughts on everything related to whatever we're interested in.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was kind of a catalyst for conversations. And then we just start talking.
Mm-hmm.
And it was always with random people and it was kind of private until I started live streaming. But that's where, all these people who are now TLC corner kind of standouts and that we know of, but nobody else knows of. And I love that. Like I really do like that because I think it's genuine community. There's nothing that we can get from each other except I think real communion, real fellowship.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't like Neil Daedalus or McMo or any of these new guys that pop up, Noah. Like what can I get from them? I'm not gonna get clicks
Mm-hmm.
from having them on my
Well,
channel. I
you
love it.
are, but it's a different kind of click. It's a click that
Yeah.
you want, where it's like you want all your friends to watch your video, because you want to
Hmm.
be understood. Like that's how I understand you. You want clicks from your friends because you want to be understood.
Yeah. And that's part of the whole personalist thing because and you only are going to know me through initiation and a lot of time. You're not going to know me through me talking to someone who has no initiation or context for me about a bunch of abstract ideas.
Hmm.
Like it's the opposite of what I think this is all about. We talk about abstract ideas, but it's not forefronted. Like that's what the radical implications of personalist knowing, my last video was about. Is this space forefronts persons, not ideas or rules or definitions. It's not anti-propositional, but I think it's the new emergent medium out of the Enlightenment medium.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting that you don't see yourself as a creative person because in my mind, it's like Luke embodies creativity in a way that so few can. Where it's like, it feels like every time I watch your videos or like I'm on your live streams, it's like Luke is doing some performative art piece that's not a performative art piece. He's just like living his life in this way that's just so like genuine and real that you're just like, what is this? This guy is so interesting. What is he doing? And it's like, because you're absolutely not doing the formula at all. Yet you're talking about ideas in this way that's really just like, here it is. What are your thoughts? Like it's very like creative in its expression, even though you're not generally talking about creative things. Although you always kind of weave creative things in because you're always talking about movies and music and all of those things. But I think you kind of see how the two intertwine and have this little dance going on.
It's this inexpressed thing. Well, it's this Rob Bell line that I love. I mean, I stole it from him, like PBK, pastors or thieves. Well, it's something that I used of his that it's become my own now, I suppose. But it's the thing behind the thing behind the thing because there's always this. It's like the essence of a thing. There in good art, I think whether it's a song or it's a film or it's whatever, there is an intangible thing that can't be named or it can only be poetically named that resonates with you and with other people and it's common, which is what makes it resonant. Like it's a resonant, it's a morphic field kind of a thing, Rupert Sheldrake. And if it resonates through time and multiculturally, that's what makes something a classic. And
Mm-hmm.
that's like something that has longevity.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pointing to some common, universal, like telodic thing, but
Mm-hmm.
it's ineffable, but we all know it, which is why
Mm-hmm.
it resonates. And that's the thing that I think that I'm always seeing and why I'm trying. That's part of what my mosaic vision is. So when I'm pointing to all these things, I'm saying this is common, but like you can't. Yeah, it's non-dual because it's structured because it's common, but you can't structure it propositionally and definitionally, or else it loses that thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. Well, let me back it up and kind of take it down to earth a little bit now. We've gone all over in the sky, but like let's take it back to
Yeah,
earth. We
keep
have
us
both
grounded.
we have both been in sort of this estuary little
Yeah.
corner thing since the beginning. We were watching Paul before the Bridges of Meaning Discord ever became a thing. And then
Hmm.
we were both early adopters of the Bridges of Meaning Discord. And so we've spent the last 5 years watching this thing evolve and change in the shadows where no one's really paying attention to it. And it's probably
Hmm.
not in the shadows. It's just like in an open field that people are like, what, who's that? What's they're doing? Are they having a picnic or something? I don't know. But,
We're like the
we're
Renaissance LARPers of the internet, and people are like, "Who are those weirdos?"
it's
And like
totally true.
cavemen.
That's a really good description of what we are doing. But anyways, that's a little bit of an aside. I kind of want to get your thought of like this development that we've seen from going from listening, being consumers to listening to Paul talk to all of these randos, and then all of a sudden being able to be participators because we could get on a Discord and talk to randos. And then from there, it's birthed creators like
Yeah.
such as myself, such as you, such as Neil, such as all of these people that have come through this sort of push. Well, no, it's Peterson, Paul, creator pipeline.
Mm.
It's not the what's the one that Mary Harrington always says? Anyways, it doesn't matter. She says something about a pipeline. But the Paul Vanderklay to like like community participation to creation pipeline, like what, how do you, how does that resonate with you? Like, what do you think about it?
So what comes to mind is Grizz's breaking the fourth wall thing. And the other thing is, are you familiar with what's the name? Joseph Gordon-Levitt's um what is
Hit,
it?
rec- hit
Red
record.
Hit Record. There you
I
go.
love Joseph
Why?
Gordon-Levitt. I have his little like hit record book. Like it's like a little. I got it from a friend for like Christmas, but it's like a little book of tiny stories. I think it's like a
Yeah.
couple different volumes, but I think it's the first one. It's like his red book, and it's all of these little tiny like whimsical stories. It's sitting in my
Yeah.
bathroom. It's like bathroom reading.
Yeah.
So, anyways.
He's great, but I mean, I think what he was doing with Hit Record is really similar to
Mm-hmm.
what this is.
Mm-hmm.
Is he was trying to do collaborative works of art, creative works of art online, and build a community that was not uh that was just kind of evenly distributed. And and I didn't follow it a lot. I mean, I knew of it in theory, and I've always liked Joseph Gordon-Levitt too. Um, and I think it's that, and it's breaking the fourth wall. It's like, yeah, you don't just, in a sense, it's incredibly uh, kind of Protestant and egalitarian because there's not like an artistic priestly class that we just all hear from on high and observe and listen and watch.
Well,
It's, yeah.
depends. Is Joseph Gordon-Levitt not a priest? And his
Well,
church is his church of hit record? Is Taylor Swift not a priestess?
yes, but Joseph Gordon-Levitt is trying to, I guess, maybe fractally play that forward. So in that sense, it's both.
Mm-hmm.
He is
Yeah, it's yes
the
and yeah.
famous one who's up there, the visionary, the star, obviously, who's making films with Christopher Nolan, and but then he is trying to spread that to other people and empower other people to create for themselves and to collab with him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's that's kind of what PBK did, although he wasn't um knowing that, but it's within this theological philosophical space. Jordan Peterson was kind of this catalyst unintentionally and came for the politics, stayed for the theology kind of way, revivified religion in a way, and trying to save the West. And there's conversations about where lately in the corner of where his true allegiances lie, whether it's with the theological or the political, you know, and he has a little bit of both of those in him.
So,
But it's playing it forward. And then Paul made the video, right? Just commenting on that. And that's what a lot of us do. I mean, a lot of us are commenting about ideas that are related to all these different things, but we're doing it. But I think the evolution in the TLC is that it is all that stuff, but it's person centric. Or like I said
mm-hmm.
to Nathan Ormond once in his live stream that he mocked me for, that I said it's deeper than ideas. Because that's the thing, is that Nathan Ormond does like very idea centric stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
I think he's an ideas first
The
with
truth
community,
first. Yes.
yeah, with community
Yes.
attached.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we are a persons first with
Ideas
truth
attached.
and ideas attached.
I agree. No, I
Um,
think that's totally true.
yeah. And so I think that's what we're doing. I don't know, in a sense, yeah, it's kind of a community art project. But but it has like marriages and children attached too. You know?
Yes. Example A or
Yeah.
B, I suppose. um, but yeah, no, it's funny. What I'm hearing you say is that Paul Vanderklay is Joe Roganing himself into uh, uh, Joseph Gordon-Levitt participation.
Yeah, I think so. And then I think people can always people talk about TLC and navel gazing and what it really is and what's going on and if it's generative, it's generative. Like this is truly generative. It's not.
Like in the most physical sense that you can get, the most like
in every way, the
grounded. Yeah.
symbolic way,
Hmm. Yes.
every level,
Also, every level. Yeah.
which is, I think that's part of my, this has been coming up recently. I mean, I don't want to detract too much from your conversation, but it is something I can kind of say it and we can table it if you want. But it's
No, go for it.
Clara asked me the other day in the comments, and it's been coming up in some of the recent conversations on Chad's channel, and then they've been happening on Discord with Kezi. But Clara asked me if my understanding of personalism and personalist knowing is fundamentally Christian and only Christians can do it. Like she asked me that in the comments, and we went
Mm.
back and forth. And I said, well, no, I said it doesn't, it's not exclusive to people who self-identify with the confessional structures of Christianity, because I think it is universal. It's anybody who's, in my sense, being a true human being. But I think, but I think it is propositionally and theologically, I think it is most clearly illustrated in the ideas and the doctrines and the historic reality of Christianity, because it is because what I'm really talking about is that the when you put the person first, you have to be willing to lose and die to the ideas. Martyrdom is fundamentally tied into that,
Hmm.
because you will sacrifice. It's like what Paul will say is like when he says, if somebody's going to die, it's me. Do you sacrifice others for the ideas, or do you sacrifice yourself for the others?
Hmm.
That and that is and and this is where like I do a little bit of a weird yin yang Taoist flip of, I think that's exclusive to Christian propositions.
Hmm.
I
But not,
really do.
but not exclusive to the participation of humanity.
No. Yes, exactly.
Hmm.
And I think people don't like that very much.
Yeah. Well, people don't like a lot of things.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't, that's where I will probably surprise people, where I argue like I think that's true. I mean, I'm going to argue for those Christian ideas, but yet at the same time, like if you're gonna, like if you would fight me on that to the point of death, well, I think it's the Christian response is, well, then
But then I
you
die.
win.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's like, well, we have
you
this.
win.
It's funny. We have this. My brother-in-law is a big board game guy, and my sister is as well. And we're always playing, and the whole joke is if Tom loses, everybody wins. Because Tom is so good at the game. If he loses, everybody wins. And he's like, great, I win either way. And, he could be mad because it's like, oh, we're all trying to beat Tom because he's so
Yeah,
good. But he's like, I win either way. So, you know, if I win, I win. If you win, I win. That's Christianity to me. It's like, what did Jesus
good
do?
on Tom.
Yeah. Every,
That is really good, because a lot of people who are that good at board games, who are really competitive, don't win if someone else wins.
Well, the thing is, he loves the game more than the reward of winning. But he also, everybody loves winning. It's fun to
Yeah,
win, and
right.
and we don't do it in a way where it's like, oh, he's so good, I hate it. I hate him. I want to beat him. It's like it's more of a joke, right? It's like, oh, we got to beat Tom,
Yeah,
and if he wins, we're not mad. We're like, oh, Tom won again. All right, we'll get him next time. It's
yeah. That's the zero sum thing, which I didn't. So I haven't talked to you about this, but I'd love to. So we've probably spoken about Arrival before, the movie, the film.
no, I don't know if we have spoken about it, but I just had a conversation with Frederic, one of the guys who came to the Breakwater Festival about
Mhm.
Arrival. So go for it. I'm prepared. This has been stuck in my head for a couple weeks now. So
Okay, so this is a conversation I've been wanting to have. So I relatively recently read the short story,
okay,
which I didn't know. So like Ted S., who did the Arkansas Convivium, who he hasn't been around for a while. I don't know if you know him.
I don't think I do.
He was pretty active for a while, and he did essentially like a Arkansas conference. It was called the Arkansas Convivium. There's a playlist of them anyhow. He has well, I'll actually share with you his little lecture thing from there on Gerald Manley Hopkins' poem, but it's excellent. But in he mentioned somewhere, and I didn't know this, that Arrival is based on this short story called, I think it's called The Story of Your Life by uh, Ted Chiang. And and I read it. It's like 50 pages. It's so much better. I mean, the movie is good. The movie's excellent. I love the movie. It's been a very formative film. And so the best parts of the movie and the stuff that stuck with me that I remembered is in the book, or is in the
Mm.
short story. But there's also a lot more in the short story that isn't in the film, and this and they Hollywooded up the film. Like all the stupid stuff in the film isn't in the short story. Um, and and there are really good parts that are in the book that don't make it in the film because they're just because you'd lose people essentially. Like it wouldn't be as wide, it wouldn't have as such wide appeal. You know, it'd be like I don't know, more like a Terrence Malick film or something. But I bring all that up to back to your board game thing. It's the zero sum thing. Like in a way, almost the one of the central ideas of the book is on non-zero sum games and
Mm.
not the idea of non-zero sum versus kind of the what Peterson talked about with conversations with the Kathy Newman, illustrating with the Kathy Newman conversation is you can have like Philo-Nikeia conversations with someone where it's just a competition hierarchy. It's just like I want to win, which is the political thing, which I think is tied to the medium of putting truth first, principle first. Like when people talk about first principles, I'm like, screw you. No first principle. Person first. I don't like the idea of first. It just, I don't know. It bothers me because I'm like, no, there are no first principles. There are first persons. Um, but so it's non-zero sum. That's the idea because in the book, it's in the movie too, but in the book, it's so the broad spoiler alerts for people that haven't watched the film. But the story, the book or the short story, the story of your life is about this daughter that's born to this woman and this man, and she's at one point in the story, she's doing her homework and she's trying to think of this idea, and she can't think of it, and she's like, and her mom is trying to help her, and at this point, the mom and the husband are estranged or separated or divorced or something, and she's like, "What's that term where like everybody wins in a thing?" And she's like, and her mom's trying to think of it, and she can't, and then she's like, "Oh, you need to ask your dad." And she's like, "It's some math thing." She's like, "Oh, you need to ask your father." And then all of a sudden, as the girl's going back up the stairs and how the movie works, it's oscillating back and forth between these two time frames and stories. She's run up the stairs, and the mom all of a sudden is like, non-zero sum. And and that movie is it's really shaped the way that I see things in a lot of ways.
Mm.
And it really ties in a lot of it almost ties in like so many like all of the essential pieces of the idea part of this little corner that are really important. Like Sam and Vervaeke's talk about like the telotic pull of this eternal reality, like the polar bear, the perfect polar bear that's pulling you from the future, which is Whitestone name, my handle, and the past and time and how all these things work and memory. Like that whole film is really about memory,
Hmm.
and the medium is the message, and writing and the written word and the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis and how this the heptapod's language reshapes the way that she perceives reality. Like that's what the basis of the whole and non-zero sum. Like what does it mean to win? And what are the stories that you choose and why would you choose them? And like the end of that film and that book, like it just wrecks me. I was on a plane and I can't like, and I'll often do this. Like I'm reading a book and I'm sitting there and I'm just like bawling, crying at the end of the book because it's um and the film does a really good job with that when because her perception of reality changes. It really reminds me of the book Loris too, because they're the same sense of time as in that book.
Mm-hmm.
And she realizes, because it's essentially that there is a circle, but it's more of a spiral. Time works circularly, and her resonating is working in these patterns, but yet she realizes the end from the beginning, at the beginning, and she sees the end and all of the pain that comes with that. And she says yes.
Mm-hmm.
And and I think that's the universal thing of what we all do. Um, and you don't it's back to the whole kind of vision non-vision thing. You see it, but you don't see it in a way that can be chosen with your ego. And I think that's the submission part of it and the humility part of it. Because if you could see it clearly, like Rogan sees the podcast in the future, of course he's going to do all those things. Because why wouldn't he? He has so much to gain. It's like he sees the perfect end, but he wouldn't be the kind of person that was shaped through the doing of it in the proper way, which is following the muse, not seeing it, or following the wisp in Brave or whatever. Like you don't know where that wisp is going. It's going into this scary forest, but you know you have to, and you're compelled to do it. Um, I don't know. That's
No, it's very interesting. I haven't seen Arrival, um, but Frederic spoiled a little bit of it for me, which makes me a little hesitant to watch it because and I'm going to spoil what he spoiled for me. So spoilers, if you don't want them, go away. But yeah, he basically was talking about how, um, it's like she's in contact with these aliens or something. Tell me if I'm
Mhm.
wrong about this, but this is
Yeah.
how he told it to me. She's in contact with these aliens, and all of a sudden she's learning to speak with them, and all of a sudden as she's learning to speak with them, she starts to be able to see the future, and she sees the visions, and she sees that she's going to have a kid, but the
Mhm.
kid is going to die in 7 years, and she still goes, I don't care. I will take those 7 years. And I had sort of it's funny that you mentioned Lawrence because I had a similar thing happen to me when I was pregnant. Towards the end of my pregnancy, I started losing sleep because I had really bad heartburn and the baby kept kicking my ribs um, in this place that like it just was so painful that I just couldn't sleep even if I wanted to. And when I don't sleep, I don't sleep. And so I've gone like, you know, weeks is a stretch, but weeks with very little sleep. And it kind of can make me a bit, uh, some might say loopy, but anyways, um, when I was in that state, I was with Verdi and he was reading Laris, and he read the beginning about the his mother, who she goes into the church and she like lays on the floor in tears because she lost her baby. And it was this weird moment where it just like hit me like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna lose my daughter. Like, I'm gonna lose my daughter. And it was like you're just, I don't know. It was just this overwhelming like grief of like, she's not even born yet. And like there was this fear like I'm gonna lose her before she's even born. Like she's gonna die young. I don't know. Like maybe this is irrational, but like that was this fear. That was this like thing that struck me. And so for that, and that doesn't help you if you're already losing sleep. All of a sudden now you're you're like facing this like you know, and in many ways it was this irrational fear because the doctors are looking at her. It's like, she's fine. Everything's fine. The heartbeat's fine. And it's just this irrational fear of like, even in the midst of all of this, there's this like sense. And like through it all, I'm just sitting there and it's like, you reckon with what you really believe in those moments. because it's like, let's say I do lose her. That's what you're having to say. Like, what, like, you want to be wrong, but like, what if I'm right? You're just hoping to God you're wrong. Like, you're like, well, okay, well, what if I'm right? It's like, I know everything will be fine because I know, because I really do have this trust and belief in something bigger than me. But nobody wants to lose their kid. Like, even if you really believe I'm going to see them in the next life, and it strikes you, that story um, in it's Kings, right, where David is faced with the fact that he's going to lose his son, and he's on his face, just weeping, the last days that his son, like his son's alive, and then his son dies, and that's the minute that he gets up and he cleans himself and he goes out and returns to a normalcy, and no one understood it. But it was like, as long as he was alive, God could change it. And it's like this sense of like, what does God want from us? Does he want us to only have like love, joy, and happiness in this soft way, or does he really want us to move to repentance so that in the next life, when we get the things that are promised us, are we good stewards of those things? And in that story, it's like, okay, let's say my daughter dies at 7. Like, I came to that point where it was like, you had to go through this thing, and it was like, my daughter didn't die, thank God. And she's fine, and she's healthy, and she's beautiful, and she's almost a year. And I celebrate it every day. But like, there's always that piece of me that's like, until she hits 1, I think there's always gonna be that piece of me that's like, that fear of like, you don't know what could happen. And so you just take every moment that you can and just have like a joy with it. And that's this kind of gift, even if it's an irrational fear and it was all a lie. It ends up being a gift, because it's like, like you treat that time differently in the face of knowing what will happen, which is that she will die. I hope at a very old age, but we're all gonna die.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do knowing that's the price?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, to your last point, what you were saying, yeah, we all, you know, she dies or you die first, like whichever comes
Yeah.
first, you're losing her.
Well, and that was the thing. It's sort of like you're starting bargaining. It's like, God, take me. Like,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. Like, and you don't understand this until you are like giving birth. But like this weird moment where I had this irrational fear that my daughter was like dying in my womb. Like, it opened me up to be prepared to give birth and be clear-minded in giving birth. Because it was like, it didn't matter what happened to me. It's like, do it, save her. Like, that was the thing. It was like, do it, save her. Like, at the end of my labor went pretty well, but at the end we both got fevers, and so we had to have like an emergency removal. And the doctor came in, and she was very calm, and she was like, okay, this is what's happening, you're both having fevers, and she's not coming out fast enough, so we're going to do an emergency episiotomy. If that doesn't work, we're going to get you right into a C-section. And it's funny because for my mom's first birth, she had the same exact thing happen to her, but it was in a very different way, where the doctor just came in, cut her, pulled her out. He didn't explain anything, and it was very traumatic for her. Yet for me, it was sort of like, one, I think the way the doctor did it was very differently, but it was also this thing where it was like, I was prepared to die. It's like, no, like, if this is the cost of like salvation for someone, like, take me instead. And you can learn that in so many different ways. Like, you can learn that through Christ, right? Because that's what he did. He took on death that was undeserved for the salvation of all. And Mary did it in a similar way, where she took on the burden of bearing Christ and watching her son die for the salvation of all. And so there's all these ways that you can learn that. But it became this way for me to learn that in this weird way where it was like C-section, fine. Cut me, fine. Like, and the pain of the stitches and all those things. Because
Yeah.
actually the birth process, and I did it without drugs, which was not advised by my mother, but I did it. um, and, so it's like, it was painful, but it wasn't actually the worst pain that I've ever felt.
Mm.
And in the moments where you're like pushing in towards the end, you're like, you don't even care because the thing is in your arms and you're just like, she's safe, she's fine, she's safe, she's breathing, she's here. You get to meet her, because that's the scary thing about like miscarriages or even like infertility. You never meet the thing hoped for. Like, oh, that's like soul crushing. um, yeah. But anyways,
Yeah.
this might be a little off topic, but anyways, you got me going on Arrival, and now we're here talking about death.
It's hard to listen. Yeah, if you want to have a conversation on topic, it's hard to keep me lined out. But that was all really great. I mean, yeah, I think you know it, but that's back to the earlier point of the radical implications is like you can know those things abstractly about Jesus or historically. Like this is
Mhm.
the Brandon Graham Dempsey thing, or like T Grog, that atheist who's always talking about like how can you know? And I'm like, not that way. The kind of knowing I'm talking about is you going through labor. That's when you know. That's the kind of knowing I'm talking about. It's not abstract. Like you know through the doing, through the living, through that kind of
Mhm.
like, are you willing to love to the point unto death and to sacrifice yourself for your ideas? Like that's the difference between the truth first people or the great philanthropist in Dostoevsky who loves mankind but can't stand to be in a room with another person. Is
Mhm.
that's not love.
Mhm.
Everybody thinks they love.
Mhm.
That's these all these people arguing the exclusivist religion on the right side of history. It's like everyone wants the good, but they're hating the people who disagree with them.
Mhm.
Well, you don't get it. That's not the Christian love is not that.
Mhm.
It's not theoretical.
It's yes and. It's like love for humanity and love for the person. And in that, it's love for God itself.
It's not love rooted in theory. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, I think all of this to say add to this effect of like, I think this is what TLC is. It's not ideas and truth. It's love embodied through community. And yeah, we talk about ideas, we talk about goodness, beauty, truth, we talk about all of those things, but you're trying to orient those things in the full person, like the full sense of humanity. And how do we navigate that dance with those things to be better meaning makers? Because that's what Peterson's calling people to, right? He's calling people to meaning, and he's got these rules to kind of say, try this, see if it works. But like the rule isn't the rule isn't the thing; it's the thing under the thing under the thing. you know?
It's the living of that, which is not something that can be like, but it's always going to be, yeah, it's always going to be that pursuit, like that Rogan pursuit of not, you see it, but you don't see it. That vision, whatever the muse is calling you to, that's the pursuit. And that's, as a Christian, it's this thing where it's like, it's not, that's where the TLC would really be tested, similar to your labor or whatever, is when ideas come that are really contentious and when there are people that are big dissenters and when people are going to fight. Like that's the proof of, are we ultimately political, or are we, you know, community centered, enemy love people? Can we
Mm-hmm.
include, can you both end? Can you
Mm-hmm.
have, you know, rules and propositions and ideas that you argue for, but then you also are willing to give up and die for the sake of the one who disagrees with you?
Yeah. I think this is a good transition to some of the practical things that I'm struggling with TLC, is sort of the modes in which we do this. So obviously, when we started, we were all consumers. We were sitting and being little flies on the wall, watching Paul talk to interesting people, and we were going, "Oh, that's me. Oh, that's me." And then all of a sudden, he goes, "Okay, we're gonna open this Discord." And I'm like, Discord? What is this Discord thing? And then there's people there. And it's like, "Oh, I can talk to all these people that Paul was talking to." And so all of a sudden, you don't need Paul as much anymore. It's like, I don't need Paul. I can talk to Luke. I can talk to Jeff. I can talk to Job. I don't need Paul.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, you stopped having these sort of, with Jeff kind of led the way with this, where instead of just private conversations on the Discord, we started sitting in rooms and recording them. And now we have these rando conversations that are recorded, but nobody's watching them. It's really for prosperity's sake more than attention or, trying to make something of it. But from that, it born channels where people are trying to make something of it, where they're trying to get bigger guests and they're trying to have these conversations on a larger
Mm-hmm.
scale. And I actually don't think that's a bad thing, but it comes with a lot of pitfalls.
Mm-hmm.
And something that you participate in that I see being potentially a really big pitfall in this is the live chat conversations that we have,
Mm.
that you do quite often. And I think there's something really interesting and good about it, but there's so many dangers with it. I'm interested to know how you feel about it and the way that it's kind of oriented, because we're not the only ones who do it, right? Like Nathan Orman does them all the time. Pine Creek
Mm.
does them. We're not the only one who does it. But like, yeah, what do you see kind of emerging with that, and why do you participate in these live chats more that go streams straight to YouTube? So they're not live chats that are private; they go straight to
Yeah.
YouTube. What about that is appealing to you? Why are you participating in that mode now more than the other modes?
Well, so I don't know. Again, it's the why I started doing that. I have no idea. Because I wasn't. Jacob started doing the StreamYard stuff with his
Mm-hmm.
just chattings,
Mm-hmm.
and I and for whatever reason, through my participation has always evolved through these different technological mediums. Right away it was just watching, and then we reached out, and then we had conversations through Zoom, and recorded them they were live for us, but pre-recorded for other
Mm-hmm.
people.
Mm-hmm.
And then people would comment, and then Jacob started doing, and then I had all these apps, whether it's like Boxer or Signal, that were kind of separate, but those are technological mediums with just particular friends. And then Jacob started doing the just chatting stuff with the stream yarding, and then you can have the same kind of conversations, but then you're also simultaneously interacting with the hive mind, as we call it, the live chat thing. And when you asked the question, what it made me think of why I like it, again, I'll point to another movie or an art thing, but Free Guy. So like the
Mm-hmm.
Ryan
The
Reynolds,
Ryan Reynolds, yeah.
like NPC, and then people coming out of the NPC and he becomes awake. But that's a very breaking the fourth wall thing. All of a sudden, this NPC thing who was just doing stuff, and they weren't just I mean, in a sense, they're almost mindlessly consuming as an NPC. And then all of a sudden, because that's what happened. Like PBK, Jordan Peterson made him step out into YouTube and start creating with his commentary. Like he'd never done that before outside the Freddie and Paul show. And then all of a sudden, all these people were watching. And then Job reaches out to him and says, I want to talk to you. And then Jeff, and then you and me, and all these different people.
Mm-hmm.
And then we start creating our own conversations. And they were just private. I don't even think we probably recorded them right away. We just talked, maybe. We didn't start recording them, did we?
No, well, it was kind of mixed. Like sometimes we would record them and then not release them. Like I know we have a couple conversations that we recorded but never
Yeah,
released.
you and I
Um,
do. It's like maybe
yeah.
Zoom just always records it, and but we were just talking. We weren't trying to
No,
create content.
no. But like
You know what I mean?
sometimes you'd be like record it and say, "Oh, maybe we can put this out and like add it to the public discourse." But really
Just
we were like,
PK.
yeah, well, no, because Randos United. Because I think, I mean, maybe you were starting Zoom chatting with other people because I did actually have some connection with people before the Discord started, like Bethel McGrew. I was talking with her before, and some other people I had connected with through Paul, and just had some of these conversations. And then the Discord opened, and then that opened up a whole new world for me. So a lot of the unrecorded stuff I was doing on Discord. And then once Randall United started going, that's
Hmm.
when I would kind of be like, okay, I'll record stuff. But then I would sometimes go in Zoom and record it. Most of the time I go into Zoom, I record it. There are a couple
Yeah,
conversations that has not been
right.
true, but I'll record it just for prosperity's sake, or
Yeah,
oh, you know what I mean?
posterity. Yeah.
Posterity, yes. So that it's like, hey, we can go revisit this in the future. It doesn't have to go out, but
Yeah.
like it's nice to have it, and then you can look back and say, oh, what did Luke
Well,
say, or what was
right.
that thing that Jeff was talking about?
So an interesting aside to that, and then I'll go back to my free guy thing and the evolution of TLC. The only people that I knew before I knew of PVK or any of this, or before Jordan Peterson, were, well, I didn't really know, but I met Sarah Hardy
Mm-hmm.
through Twitter, like way back in the day, and we kind of became quasi internet friends. And there's this other guy who isn't in TLC that I met through Twitter, who I became close with for a while. And I interacted with Bethel. Like I knew of Bethel
When she
before
was
all
still
this.
Esther O'Reilly, before she
Yeah,
unmasked
right.
herself.
But that was before PDK and all this stuff because
Yeah.
for some reason, like I had seen her on
Oh,
Twitter
okay.
back when I was really active on Twitter back in the day, and she just drove me crazy. And so I would like get in fights with her on Twitter because that was like in my really early days of just talking about all the stuff that I talk about a lot in the corner, but like talking about rationalism and the Enlightenment and propositionalism and all this stuff that's very TLC common parlance now. But like that, I just drove me nuts because I used to have this hashtag on Twitter called the rightness paradigm, where everyone's just trying to be right about things, which was kind of like it was like a proto exclusivist religion of the right side of history and confessionalism. Paul's most recent members only video, by the way, is like, I'm like, this is, you're preaching my gospel, Paul. This is
You're
things.
speaking my
But
language.
um but back to the free guy thing, I think that that's always been the evolution is, and I think this is why I like live streaming to get to your point is more, I think the medium of live streaming and StreamYard more so brings people out of the lurk and breaking that fourth wall than any other thing. Because there's all these people in the chat, because it's this slow, it's almost like boiling a frog in water or something. There's this slow thing that happens with people where they're just watching, and then they'll maybe start engaging in the chat. And then all of a sudden there's this, they see other people emerging because there's this stream, and you always can. There's always that temptation, just like, oh, I could just click the link, and there's a hesitancy because there's people, it's funny because like I even the less that I've been doing this now since I've been working full time, like there's been a few times I'm not usually this way because I'm not shy. I don't seek the spotlight, but I don't care. Like everybody could be looking at me, I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people aren't that way, and so this comes very like this isn't a stretch for me. Putting out all of my thoughts and vulnerability and like crying, like I just it's the same. I'm the same everywhere, basically. I mean, I really think that. People say like they filter themselves and they wear different masks in different spaces. I
You don't. I can I
don't
can I
really.
can confirm that you don't.
Yeah. And so it's not hard for me, but the I've been participating less and I've almost just been like I had like little things where I'm just like, oh, I don't know if I want to like do like pop onto this video or something. Like I felt a little bit of that lurker thing, just a little tinge. And I was like, oh, and it was good. It made me be able to empathetically resonate with people a little bit. But the live streaming thing, I think I don't know, it brings people out. Because like Neil, somebody who's he's funny because he says he's an introvert, and I believe him. And he's so disinclined to say things, but he's so chatty in this thing,
Yeah.
And a lot of people are. And all of a sudden they come out, and McMo will talk about how like these are your some of his best friends, and you don't want to just like have this as your only space, but there is something that's so weird about this space. Like I just know automatically I can talk to you about some of the things that are the most important things to me instantly, that like just other people in my real life don't get.
Well,
And yeah.
I mean, it was weird for a while. It was like you recognize that there were strangers on the internet who knew more about who you really were than sometimes your parents. Where it's like,
Yeah.
I think about like, I've never met Sherry in my life, but I feel like we know each other in a way that some of my friends don't even
Mm-hmm.
that I've spent a lifetime with don't know me. And like
Mm-hmm.
it becomes an even crazier thing. It's like you meet your husband on this. And
Mm-hmm.
we met during COVID, so you spend 8 months growing a relationship that has never like you've never met each other. All you've
Mm-hmm.
seen is floating heads on camera, and then all of a sudden you have to think, okay, what are we doing? What are we
Right.
doing? Like,
Right.
uh, are we like how does this work? How do you make this into transition into real life, and will it transition into real life? And I mean, thank God it did, but
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's like there's a certain terror to it, but like there's a weird beauty to it as well. That it's just like, often people talk about strangers on the internet who are going to steal your children and
Mm-hmm.
lure them into their vans with free candy. But it's like, we just had Jeff and his son in our house and spend 2 days with us and going around the Netherlands. And his son is like, oh, yeah, my dad's crazy cult. But like, here we
Yeah.
are, like showing them hospitality and being here. And, you give them the taste of like, okay, this is still weird, but like, it's not as weird as I maybe thought.
I
I don't
think it's
know.
just
Maybe he
I
thinks it's
think
weird. I don't
it's
know.
I think it's because it's just new. If you really think about human history, we've all, the kind of relationships that we can form have always been connected to technology or some kind of innovative thing. Because like you think before the invention of the wheel and what the wheel allowed you to do and distances allowed you to travel and people it allowed you to interact with, or even the technology of writing and writing letters and communicating at a distance and the telephone or the automobile and the internet is just the newest thing that allows us to interact globally with people and get to interact with them, and then it manifests in these conferences and estuaries and meetups and different things. It's just the new thing, and people think it's weird, but it's not weird. Like we've been doing this for thousands of years. This is
It's,
just the new technology.
it's strange, but it's not weird.
Yeah,
But it is
yeah,
strange.
it is strange.
You can't, I don't think we should deny the strangeness of it. It's strange.
I mean, it's novel and it's new, and I think it's like I think of these things in terms of um well, Rupert Sheldrake, even like memory and resonance, like one of his illustrations I always use of morphic resonance is like the first time a new crystal is formed in the history of the world, like a chemist comes up with a new crystalline structure and it's hesitant. That crystal is hesitant to form. It doesn't want to do it. And then all of a sudden it forms. And then after that, if you measure it over time, the more times you crystallize that same thing, it becomes faster because there's a memory for it. And it's the same thing with like teaching a rat a maze. This is one of his proofs, one of his studies that he does to prove morphic resonance, is you teach a bunch of mice how to navigate this maze to get the cheese. And then the same maze is transferred instantly outside of space and time across the world to mice of the same species who have the same resonance but have no genetic connection. And it happens instantly, and you can measure it across the globe. Like these are studies that Rupert Sheldrake will do to prove his like non-scientific theory of morphic resonance. But he does scientific studies, and and they're valid outside of the normal standard deviations, or he'll do these studies on telepathy. So I think of things that way, is like this thing is strange in that it's novel, but it's a new crystal. But like other this pattern happens, if you can see the pattern, this is just the new crystal,
Yeah.
but it's the same thing.
Yeah. Well,
And then to wrap up the whole why I like live streaming is I've started to see it this way, is ultimately at the end of the day there's some aspect of me, like I went to seminary for like a couple months once and then quit because I was an idealist. I was like, these people don't even believe the Bible. Like that's back in my more fundy evangelical days.
that sounds
And
like such a Luke Thompson story. I went to
and
seminary for a couple months.
yeah, it is one. And cost a lot of money. But it lesson learned, I guess. And there's something in me that is very, that always has been very pastoral. I don't know. I think of it in terms of discipleship. I and like wanting people to understand me and or friends like Trip and Sam. We have this message where Trip Trip Fuller or Parker, sorry, not Fuller, had the idea to try to find the piece of music that both that like fits us or something. And of course, Sam is like some piece of Mozart who's very like precise and technical. Mine is like they're like Luke is some kind of jazz or something. Um, so okay, what was I? Why did I bring them up?
You were jazzing.
I was jazzing. I lost the thread though. Oh, pastoral. So like there's something in me that I think of it in terms of almost discipleship or something. Oh, that's Trip. Trip said, I like it when people, when my audience or create whatever I'm creating, when people can feel the same things that I'm feeling. That's when I probably most feel seen. Like when some piece of art, like Arrival, like if that moves you, music, I have like a curated playlist of songs that mean a lot to me. I need to get rid of some of them because it's not always right. But there are some songs where I'm just like, if you like, there's this song, there's a few songs by Medium Build, who's this art, he's my favorite artist of this last year. Like he has a song called Rage, which I've sent to Hezi, and Hezi just really resonated with it. And he's like, oh my, like he's like, and that like something like that just makes me, I don't know, it like validates my existence. I'm just like I feel less crazy. I feel less alone in the world. Like if this song resonates with you the way that it makes me feel, I feel seen and alive,
Hmm.
And he has his new album Country, which I highly recommend. His first song on it is called Beach Chairs, and it's actually a love song that he wrote to himself. And I found that out afterwards because it's just kind of a love song. And then I found out it's about himself because the first time I heard it, I'm just like, this song is like about me. I'm just like, it's unbelievable. And so like that guy, I don't know. I just like if people resonate with that song, I'm just like, whatever the thing is behind the thing that just calls to me. If you see that too, then like we're simpatico, like it makes me feel seen. It's communion. And live streaming, when I find people who come out of the lurk, like all these guys, anyone who starts interacting with me on the live stream is like all this stuff, like I get it. I see it. I like it means something to me. It's the meaning, back to the meaning thing. And I just am like, yes, I'm not crazy. That's what it is, I think. It's relational. I want other people to feel passionate, but also I want to feel less crazy because my whole life, everyone's just like, you're weird. You know, like my dad, who sired you, boy? He's just like, where the hell did you come from? Like, you're such a weirdo. And I feel I'm still kind of a weirdo in the TLC, but I'm less weird here than I am everywhere else.
Well, me and
That's maybe
Ferdy,
one thing.
we do this like open house dinner every month where like the last Thursday of the month we open the doors and like people can come. And
Beautiful.
yeah, we had a small group. We did it for the first time last month. We had a small group, and that was something we had talked about. Diego, I don't know if you know Diego.
Good the name.
He
Yeah.
does some of the in-person stuff here in the Netherlands with Estuary,
Okay.
but he was talking
Yeah.
about like, oh man, like I feel like such a weirdo, and me and Ferdy like, we're just collectors of weirdos. Like we love it.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
we're the island of misfit toys. We're like, yeah, you're
Mhm.
here. You can, but like that's the thing. It's like I think we all feel like weirdos in some ways, and that's why we put on masks and try to conform and try to like find ways to like express that so we feel less weird. But I think most of the things we feel are not as weird as we imagine if we see them in the right space and orientation.
Yeah. Yeah. TLC is a place where you can kind of let your freak flag fly. Say that 5 times fast.
Yeah, but in a serious way.
Yeah. Serious, but also silly. This is why I like Chad. And it's kind of
Yes.
like the unbearable lightness of being. It's like if you're constantly serious, like there's a malevolent why so serious? That's the Joker.
Hmm.
but there's also a holy fool, why so serious?
Mm-hmm.
There's both of those things. And that's because people have said that's kind of my spiritual thing. It's kind of Dionysius, Pan, like the god of wine. Like I'm a little that way. Like I'm kind of all over the place. Like I'll be very serious on one hand. My wife even said that of me. She's like, thank God, because I can be really intense and serious, but I'm also very playful and silly and
Mm-hmm.
serious. And she's just like, thank God for that. Because like if you were not as playful as you are, you would be unbearable. You would just be too much.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel I have a similar pattern, but it manifests itself in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where I feel like you'll appreciate this. I realized very recently that I am a bleeding heart liberal, but not in a political sense.
Yeah. Totally.
And so it's like the absurdity that comes with that, especially being a quote unquote conservative.
Yeah.
Like people can't, I can't make sense of it. I feel like a walking contradiction all of the time. But
Yeah.
it's like I find the most joy in both sorrow and whimsy.
Mm-hmm.
The most joy in like sacrifice, but also grace. Like, how does that make sense? How does that fit in one person? I don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
how my husband deals with me. He's a very patient man. That's how he does it.
He's great. Well, and speaking to I'm gonna show up someday at your guys' house. I mean, you'll know in
No,
advance.
you're
I won't know
always
how to get,
welcome. I've said
because I
this
won't know how to
before.
get there. Um, but there's so one of the things. So Tripp sent me this song back to what we were talking about that he thought was by me, which is this Wynton Marsalis, Salis, Jungle Blues. And at the beginning, he talks about it before he goes into the song, before they start playing the video. There's a little interview. And two ways that he spoke about jazz was he said these two lines, and I wrote it in there because it's right in my up my alley, but it's this levity and seriousness. So he said antagonistic cooperation, and I was just like, hell yeah. And and then he said the jazz is kind of always optimistic but recognizes sorrow. And to me,
Mm,
that's just like a sorrowful but always rejoicing.
mm.
It's like a very, you know, a man of sorrows and well acquainted with grief. All of that, like it's a very Christian idea, before the joy set before him. It's that kind of tension of, and this is why I don't actually like. This is a little bit of an aside, but I just thought of it. That Orthodox Nathan, um,
What?
yes, our Nathan and Shelley Nathan was because he said this, which can be an Orthodox idea, but I don't know if it is. I don't like it that Jesus never laughed. I'm just like, no, nope, nope, nope. I don't like that at all because of this very thing.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, it's very interesting that you talk about jazz being sorrowful. I have to
Hmm.
think about that more. But I always loved jazz. And I don't even listen to it very much, but there's something about it. Like I'm a little like ooh, whimsy, chaotic improv. And I actually took a
Hmm.
little jazz piano class in college just for fun. And yeah, there was something about like the process of that is really interesting. And that's a whole nother conversation. Maybe we'll have a conversation about jazz and um, but it reminds me of the beginning of Blue Like Jazz by Donald Miller,
Hmm.
where he
Hmm.
talks about how like I hated jazz, like it was just cacophanous, it was all over the place. I didn't understand it, but I saw someone on the street playing jazz music on their saxophone, and it made me realize sometimes you have to see someone else love something before you can love it yourself. And like, is that not the most beautiful
Beautiful.
thing? And like to pull
Yeah.
my own movie, it's like, La La Land.
Hmm.
That's what that story is completely. It's like, how do you how do you teach someone who doesn't understand what you love why you love it?
Yeah.
That's I think what we're all trying to do in
Show them.
this little corner.
Yeah.
It's
Taste.
like, yeah. But anyways, we've talked for quite a while. Do you
Did
have
we
any
cover
of?
what you wanted to with all of
Yes,
our weird tangents?
yes, and I knew we would. I have complete trust with you that even if it's not my plan, we're gonna cover what we need to cover. That's never a question. But no, it covered all of my bases in ways that I could not have constructed it to be. So thank you very much. Do you have any last thoughts before we shut her down?
No, no, not really. Besides that, I've just kind of admitted because I've had my own struggles with TLC and participation in here, and it's been difficult in a lot of because my situation is I mean it's probably not completely unique, but it's different in that I came into this space married and with kids and with a very full life.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wasn't uh bored or single or looking for a lot of other things. It was more just I don't know. What was I looking for? Maybe I still haven't found what I'm looking for. Or and I have not. But it's been a tension with my wife in particular because she I think she gets it a little bit more. This is connected to your what did you say right before I started this? Like what about OTLC? Anything else we haven't covered? And sharing, seeing your illustration of seeing somebody else love something with the jazz player in the blue like beginning of blue like jazz. It's that like why do I because that's even been a struggle for me with my wife. Like how can I illustrate to her somebody who's not thinky talky, who doesn't really like talking about ideas. I mean sometimes she will with technology and kids and psychology and family dynamics, a lot those topics she's interested in. But like but what the TLC is, like even trying to describe it to people, and this is the thing, is again, you can't I don't think you can by definitions and through propositions. You won't get it. Like, what is the TLC and why do I love it? Because that's what I'm trying to get to. Like, why do I keep doing it? Why, what even brought me here? Because this space provides me something I don't get anywhere else. And that's a common thing among TLC kind of randos. And that's why I'm still here. Um, and how do I convey that love and what that is to someone else? Because it's a little bit of a je ne sais quoi. Like, why, I don't know how to explain to you why I value this so much and why I want to keep doing it, but I do. And thankfully I've gotten to the place in my marriage where I mean this current period of my life is a lot busier. Um, and so I don't have as much time to participate, but um I think we're at peace where she knows it's really important to me, and so she
Mhm.
just lets me do it. And I think she's starting to see the value in it because I think she doesn't have a context for it. She just thought of it as like a thought space or this cult weird thing. And I'm like, no,
Well, it
people's
is.
lives are being transformed.
I mean, we're drinking the
It's,
Kool-Aid, but yeah, we're
yeah.
not dying.
But don't you think like people I really do think people's lives are being transformed for the better. And there's a lot of stories about that.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I can't speak for everyone.
no.
I know,
And there'll be exceptions to every rule, but that almost
yeah,
proves the rule, you know?
yeah, yeah, the thing that keeps me going, because I've had my own negative experiences with TLC and my own dangers in this space and um, what it means. But it's like, I look at my own life as the proof of like, it changed my life so it could change somebody else's. So until I'm asked to stop by the thing higher than me,
Yeah.
I keep going because that's all you can do.
Yeah, same. And I will leave. I think that's what happens, when whatever the muse, whenever my muse or whatever's driving me to participate in this place that I can't fully explain moves. I often think of that verse like they went out from us because they were not of us. But I think that's true. Like people leave the particularities of a body, leave the unity of that body when their muse no longer compels them to that body, and I think that's when people leave and you can't and if you're really honest and integrated with yourself whenever that time comes like that. I mean, that's essentially that's an esoteric and stupid way of saying what you just said. Like you will you'll keep participating here as long as you feel compelled to be, despite all the criticisms or dangers or whatever. And hopefully, if we're telling the truth, especially to ourselves, we're properly discerning that, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I love it. I love the space. I love the people. I
Well,
like all of it.
that's what Verdi talks about all the time. It's like the people matter more than anything else, especially like if you're talking about work. It's like you can have the best job, the dream job that you have, but if you don't like the people that you're around, if you don't feel like you're understood by the people then you're around, it's a nightmare. But when you're around people who you love, who understand you, who you get, maybe sometimes drive you crazy, but who
Uh-huh.
you still kind of have a deep care for, all of a sudden when you're in the trenches, it doesn't feel so
Yeah.
miserable.
The suffering becomes the joy because
Mm-hmm.
then you're in that weird non-dual flow state, The antagonism is is cooperative antagonism, all
Mm-hmm.
those weird Christ the Eternal Tao stuff. Which have you ever read that book? I want to because I talk about it all the time, but I haven't read it
Mm-mm.
yet. There's
No,
some
I've never even heard of it actually. I mean,
oh
maybe I've heard you talk about it, but it hasn't stuck in my head.
like Cal Kalia Rivet, who's a buddy who actually he's one of those guys because like he came in through randos. He didn't even really know of Paul, or he'd maybe watch Paul, but he was watching
Mm.
randos videos.
Oh,
And
that
I
is a
think
weird on ramp.
yeah, he had just because he was raised Hare Krishna, and then he became an atheist, and then he kind of got back into Christianity through Christopher Langan, who's like this genius IQ famous person
Mm.
in the CTMU, and then he became a universalist, and so he was YouTubing like Christian universalism, and like my randos videos showed up, so that's his weird on ramp. And he talked about Christ the Eternal Tao, which was written by this, I think his name is Higher Monk Damascene. He became a monk, I think, under Seraphim Rose, but he was like a California Buddhist kind of person, and somehow stumbled upon Orthodoxy and Seraphim Rose, and then became Higher Monk Damascene and wrote a book, kind of because he was California Buddhist, he was really interested in those ideas, and then he wrote this book called Christ the Eternal Tao, which is really connected to like Jordan Daniel Wood stuff and Saint Maximus stuff.
Mhm.
So anyway, I always talk about that because those things I found that fascinating that like in Chinese, sometimes logos, that's the translation of logos, is the Tao.
Mm. All right. Well, I feel like if I go anywhere else, it's just going to go for another like
It
half an
will
hour to
shut us down.
45 minutes. So I'm going to land the plane. Thank you so
Okay.
much, Luke. This was really enjoyable.
Yeah, it was some